So we're live. We're live here inside Madonna University. I go to college here, take classes here. We're live on the Palace of Pistons YouTube page, and the Pistons have finally done it. I'm going to tweet out the tweet going so we can see, we can get some people in here to talk about what the Pistons have just done, and that's that they've traded Andre Drummond. They finally have done it. They have moved on from the two-time All-Star, the All-NBA center. I want to get the chat going here. If you guys are watching, please, first off, share it. Second off, leave a like, all that good stuff. But let's share that we're live and we're talking about this. I want to see your comments. I'm going to really leave it open to you guys. You guys can direct where the conversation goes here. As I send this tweet out, let's get the chat going with some stuff on this Drummond trade. Get this stuff up on my Twitter, the Palace of Pistons Twitter. All of you guys can check it out, and we can talk about this trade and what else may happen. But let's talk about it. So I'm going to take a look at the chat here. Hopefully we got some comments coming in. I want to see what you guys think about it. And let's get going here. I'm going to send this to the Palace of Pistons chat so they can join, hopefully share it as well. But let's talk. I got my Twitter out, so in case anything else happens, we can talk about it. Let's see. John Doe, we hate Drummond, got nothing. So let's talk about the return. Well, first off, the trade itself, Andre Drummond being sent to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Brandon Knight, John Henson, and a second-round pick, which Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reports it's either the worst one between either the Golden State Warriors or Cleveland Cavaliers. So not great, not a great return for the Detroit Pistons. I don't think anyone will really tell you otherwise. But that's what the Pistons got. They didn't get a first-round pick. They didn't get a young asset. They got expiring contracts that matched Andre Drummond's value, and they got a second-round pick. Unlike the belief of others, this wasn't a deal where the Pistons were going to be able to get an asset that would help them jumpstart their rebuild. Instead, it was a trade that allowed them to get off of Drummond and get off of his contract and not have to worry about him accepting his $28 million player option, which for some reason it was becoming more and more apparent that he just may do that. But again, that's not the case for the Pistons anymore, as Andre Drummond is no longer a Detroit Piston in this trade. But Brandon Knight's back. That's pretty interesting. John Henson is going to probably come in and play the backup center spot for Detroit if they hold on to him. They could be looking to maybe just buy him out. I'm not exactly sure. But let's see what the chat is talking about here. I see a lot of bad trades. I see a lot of comments saying this is a bad trade. Red Gorilla, waste of time. Zippy Zoo, bad trade. Javon Green, they're dumb AF for that. Mitch Matreski, or Michael Matreski, sorry about that. I'm done, no longer Pistons fans. How do we not get at least a first-round pick for Dre? Corncat 2020, would Andre opting in have stunted our rebuild? Expirings are good, but sheesh. Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I'll take a stab at it here. Again, kind of just doing this a little impromptu. I think many of us were not expecting Andre to be traded anymore after talks had seemingly slowed down. But would Andre opting in have stunted the rebuild? I mean, I guess it depends on a few things. One, what do you value Christian Wood as? Do you value him as a potential starter in the NBA? Do you value him as a key piece moving forward for the Pistons rebuild? It seemed like he was really starting to put it all together for the Pistons, especially as of late. He went through that slump and then really started to put it together. And as of late, he's been playing really, really well. So I think that that's something that the Pistons had to take into consideration. And if you take into consideration what you're asking, would Andre have opting in stunted a rebuild? Well, does that stunt Christian Wood's development? Does that Andre money stop the Pistons from paying Christian Wood in the offseason when he's an unrestricted free agent and looking for a payday. I know that he's expecting a payday. I talked to people that would know what Christian Wood is thinking and what his camp are thinking, and he's expecting to be paid well in the offseason. So that's kind of where my thoughts are on that. On the court, does it stunt the Pistons' development, the Pistons' rebuild? Again, I guess it kind of just takes away minutes from Christian Wood. And if the Pistons are, able to, decide to draft a center for some reason, that's something else that they had to look at. What do they do, right? So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I think it would have stunted the Pistons' rebuild in a sense. One, because then you have Drummond taking up shots. You have Drummond having the offense go through him a lot. And, I mean, we've seen that this year, even with some of the young guys playing, Bruce, Sekou, Svi, all getting big minutes, especially as of late here. Drummond has still been the vocal point of the offense. He's still touching the ball every possession, and, he's still running the show for them on offense, even if he's not been great. Now, I will say the last few games, obviously, he's been phenomenal, but I think it would have stunted the rebuild. And I think that if you're the Pistons, you have to move on from him in that sense that you just kind of got to start fresh. You got to let the young guys go at it for the rest of this season and, let the offense run through Bruce and Svi and Sekou. And if Luke Kennard's still on this team in the next 10 minutes, those guys get to run the show, get to be the final grouping for the Pistons this season and let them develop the rest of the way and just go from there. So that's kind of where my thoughts are on that. I'm going to get to some more questions here. I can't promise I'm going to get to everything. So definitely, though, if anyone does a super chat, I will definitely answer that question. If they do that, that's a great way to support us here at Palace of Pistons. If you want to do that, obviously, no pressure or anything. I'm still going to read questions if I can find them, whether you donate or not. So certainly there's nothing saying you have to do that or anything like that. Noah Loftman, my buddy Noah, who, if any of you have been with us for a long time, know that Noah started Palace of Pistons with me. He was the co-founder of Palace of Pistons with me. I'm going to read his thoughts here. Great move. Finally, this team has a clear direction. Dre was going to opt in, and we would have been stuck with him for more years to come. Got to move on, and Dre's value isn't much in the league. And I think, I kind of agree with you. I just kind of talked about that, Noah. It did kind of appear like that. If Drummond opted in, you got to go with him for another season, and you don't really have that sense of direction, which the Pistons didn't really have this year. And it hurt that Blake got hurt and Luke got hurt, and they didn't have enough guys healthy, and obviously Reggie got hurt for 35, 40 games, whatever it was. That kind of took away that direction of winning that they had, but it's something that Detroit had to do, and now move on from Drummond, even if the return wasn't very good. But definitely, guys, respond in the chat. Are you happy with the return that the Pistons got for Andre Drummond? That's the big question that I have. Do you think that the return that they got for Drummond was worth it? Again, the return is Brandon Knight, John Henson, and a second-round pick. But let's keep looking in the chat here. The casual gamer, fine. Move Dre. You can't justify what we got back. Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. I think when you see a guy like Clint Capella go out and be traded for a first-round pick, even with it being of not great value of a first-round pick, it's not like it's a top 10, 15 pick. It's probably more so a 25, 30 pick. It's tough, but it's the Nets pick, so it's maybe around 20. But it's a tough thing to swallow. It's a tough pill to swallow to see another center go off the market that I'd say is a worse player than Drummond, and him be worth a first-round pick. And for Drummond, you get expirings and the worse of a second-round pick between Cleveland and Golden State, whichever pick has lower draft value. So, yeah, no doubt about it. That you can be upset about the return. It's a 2023 second-round pick, and that's fine to be upset with that. But I think you also have to look at it from the standpoint of maybe the Pistons just needed that fresh start to get rid of Drummond. Make sure that the second half of the season is all about the young players, all about Sekou Doumbouya, Christian Wood, Bruce Brown, Svi Mykhailiuk. Let those guys go out there and play. Drummond. Drummond's disappearance gives up about 15 shots for the rest of the team to use, which I think is good for guys like Sekou, who sometimes don't shoot as much as he should. When you're going to get Luke Kennard back in the fold and Svi cemented himself, you're going to need some more shots from the wing, and Kennard's going to be able to fill that. Again, if Kennard's on this team here in the next 5 to 10 minutes as the trade deadline really starts to wind down. But, just going to take a minute to look at all these trades here that are going on. D'Angelo Russell of Minnesota, Marcus Morris to the Clippers. But let's go back to the chat and let's read some of the stuff that we got going on in here. Motor City, I wish we at least got Tristan Thompson. I mean, do you need Tristan Thompson at this point? If you're going to get Tristan Thompson, wouldn't you rather just hold on to Drummond, I guess? I think, again, half the reason for trading Drummond is it opens up the starting center spot for Christian Wood. And now the second half of the season is Christian Wood having to prove that night in and night out he can be a starting level center. And if he doesn't, well, then fine. I mean, he still has value. He can be a good backup big off the bench playing the 4 or the 5. But now, at least as of now, with the way the Pistons roster looks, it's going to be about Christian Wood showing that I can go up against the different starting centers in the league, Jonas Valanciunas, Joel Embiid, whoever you throw at me. I'm going to have to prove that I am good enough to be on the floor for 32 minutes a night and compete against them and deal with the wear and tear, the defensive assignments, the defensive variance, and the defensive coverages that it's going to take to defend those type of guys. And he's going to have to show his value, and we'll be able to see what his value is going into next season for the Pistons, and obviously with his offseason coming up and having to pay him. That's kind of where it's at with the Pistons right now. TDB3, who cares? The Pistons need to just tank and get a top 3 pick. I mean, it kind of looks like that's what it's going to be. Now they weren't really winning with Drummond, but losing him certainly doesn't help their chances of winning either, especially considering that the pieces that they had gotten back, of course, they're coming in off a win last night against the Phoenix Suns, who were a team in hot pursuit of Luke Kennard. Those talks, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, have stalled. But getting a top 3 pick, that's probably going to be pretty hard for Detroit to do here, considering the fact that, they're already so far out. Top 3 might be hard to do, but maybe they're able to get to 5 or 6, and then you play with the lottery odds, and maybe you do get down to 3. I mean, that's kind of where Detroit's at right now. That's kind of what they have to hope. And, looking at the rest of the season where they're playing the young guys, there shouldn't be an expectation to win because I don't think they will win. But they'll have a chance to drop down in the draft standings, and, maybe they got down again to 5 or 6 going into the lottery, and if for some reason the Pistons get lucky. It doesn't really ever happen, but what if they do? And then, all of a sudden they get a top 3 pick, and you look at the top of this draft class: James Wiseman, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Maxey. There's some different names out there that are intriguing, that spark some interest, and it would give Detroit a bit of a spark in their newly found rebuild. Coyote 5.0. He was going to pick up his option because nobody is going to pay him $20+ million a year. He's not worth it. Yeah, and I think that's the case. Again, I'm just going to mention, if you guys do donate with a Super Chat 1, thank you, because it helps out what we're trying to do here at Palace of Pistons a ton, and it'll make sure that I'm able to see your question. I see the chat moving pretty quickly, so I'm not able to get to every question, but I'm going to read this comment from Coyote 5.0. He was going to pick up his option because nobody's going to pay him $20+ million a year. He's not worth it. And I think that was kind of where we were heading with Drummond. Obviously, over the last few games, he's played pretty well. But before that, he was not. The last 2-3 weeks, he was really, really struggling, really ever since his name was in trade talk starting back in the first week of January. Things, started to change with his performance level. So, for him to opt into that $28 million option that he had, it was starting to become a greater possibility. And I think that's a little worrisome if you're the Pistons. And I think that's kind of some of the reason that they moved on from Drummond, is they saw the potential for him to take that option. And you kind of have to weigh the benefits, the pros and cons. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. But certainly open to taking some more questions here. I'm just checking Twitter to see if we have any other Pistons trade news. Doesn't look like it so far, but definitely some anticipation that some other guys could be on the move. Markieff Morris is certainly a name that should be on the move, considering he has value. And again, the Pistons, not trying to win this season, should be looking to pick up more assets. But Markieff Morris, Langston Galloway, Derrick Rose, Luke Kennard, All guys on the market right now for the Pistons that could be on the move. The trade deadline, though, ending here very shortly. So not sure if there's going to be any other last-minute trades, which I think would be pretty disappointing if the Pistons did not trade a Markieff Morris at least. We know he has some value. We know you can get a second-round pick back for him, which is something that they absolutely should do. I think that's really, really important that they recoup assets right now as they get set to begin their rebuild, so that when they get into year 2, year 3, and they want to make a move on someone and they want to trade or do something, they have assets to move, whether it's a young player or it's picks. I think that's important for the Pistons. Let's see here. I'm gonna take a look in the chat once again to try to find something to talk about. I feel bad for D Rose. He's stuck on this bum team. Hey, Derrick Rose wants to be here. That's his decision. We got that report a while ago that the Pistons said they would move him if he wanted to be moved. And Derrick Rose has come out publicly multiple times and said that he wants to be here. He wants to be in Detroit. He wants to be a member of the Pistons. He's also said that he understands it's a business and he understands if he's traded. But at the end of the day, he wants to be here. And even though I think the Pistons should trade him, which it doesn't look like they are since it's 3 o'clock and the trade deadline's winding down as we speak, this is where we're at with him. He wants to be here, but the Pistons should have moved on from him. If anyone feels that way, I don't disagree with you. The Pistons should have traded Derrick Rose. They should have gotten value for him because this is the highest his value is probably ever going to be throughout the rest of his career. And, that's kind of how it is. He wanted to be here before we blew up the team. Well, is that necessarily the case? Because, those comments are pretty fresh from Rose, and the Pistons have been losing for the last, few months. So, I don't really know if that's truly the case. But, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, no doubt about it. So, I think the thing with Rose was he wanted to be here because of his relationship with Arntelem. And when you're a guy that goes from team to team, you kind of want to settle down for a year or two. And I understand that. I respect that. But this is kind of where the Pistons are at with Derrick Rose. They should have traded him no matter whether he wanted to be here or not. They have enough point guards on the roster that they need to work on and develop, especially going into next season when there's a lot of potential that they draft a point guard because it's a point guard heavy draft class. So it's kind of how it is. It's kind of how it is. Checking Twitter here, see Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports reporting that the San Antonio Spurs have informed DeMar DeRozan that he will not be moved. That was definitely a guy that a lot of people on Pistons Twitter were talking about being an option for the Pistons to trade for. Not so much recently, but in the last month or so. But again, nothing else coming from the Pistons front with the trade deadline technically over. Maybe we get some last-minute news here, some late news in here. Let's see, we got a super chat here from Bravo Mo 1982. First off, thank you for the super chats. I certainly do appreciate that. Any last-minute trade Pistons made, Keith, Galloway? Right now, no, we have not heard anything on that. It was my expectation that at least Markieff Morris would get moved. Wasn't as sure about Langston Galloway, but I thought at $7 million on an expiring contract, shooting over 40% from the three-point line, Galloway should have been a player that teams went after, no doubt about that. But Markieff Morris is a guy that I expected to get moved for at least a second-round pick, and I've been refreshing the timeline, and I'm still not seeing anything on him. And the thing with Morris is it's not like there was only one or two teams that was interested in him. There were 5, 6, 7 teams. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Celtics, the Nuggets, the Rockets, 5 teams right there, all reported to have interest in him. I'm sure there's another 1 or 2 that I'm forgetting. But for the Pistons to hold on to him, that's really bad. That is really, really, really bad. And it's a terrible decision by the Pistons to hold on to Markieff Morris. Whether they, there had to have been a second-round pick out there for a guy that's averaging over 10 points per game, shooting greater than 40% from the field, can play the 4, the 5, as a backup. He absolutely could have been worth something. And, that's just it's tough to see that the Pistons did not move on from him and get some sort of value back. Galloway, again, didn't know how much value he would have, but I thought there would be a team. And I thought Philadelphia, I know they had reportedly been interested in him. I thought they would have been a good fit for Galloway, considering he would have been able to come in and really play the role of a knockdown shooter. He wouldn't have had to handle the ball. There's a lot of other defensive-minded guys there where Galloway, who's a capable defender, wouldn't be put in any situation where, he would be put in a tough defensive assignment. So, I thought they would be a really good landing spot for Galloway, and whether the Pistons were able to get back a second-round pick or take a flyer on Zaire Smith, that would have been worth it for Detroit. Bravo, Mo, 1982 with another super chat. Certainly appreciate that, man. Pistons waive of players soon to open a roster spot. Yeah, they're going to have to, because they took back 2 players in that deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They bring back John Henson and Brandon Knight. So they're going to have to open up a roster spot as they just send out Andre Drummond, unless they decide to just outright waive one of them, which is something I guess they could do. But I think if you're looking for a candidate to be waived currently on the Pistons roster, I think you have to look at either Kyrie Thomas or Tim Frazier. Thomas hasn't played a game this season. He's been out with injury, close to returning, certainly. But, at the same time, how much do the Pistons worry about him? But we got some news here from James Edwards, and we're talking about this right now. So let's get right into this. He says, at JL Edwards, with the third on Twitter, says, being told the Pistons will waive someone to get to 15 roster spots. Frazier, a likely candidate. I'm hearing that's, again, according to James Edwards of The Athletic. So Tim Frazier seems like he's going to be the odd man out. And I know that Tim Frazier's not a great player or anything. I was a fan of him. I liked what he brought to the table at times. A veteran that, when his number was called, was ready to go in. He wasn't going to win you games or anything, not by any stretch of the imagination, but he was just a steady hand. And, of course, that doesn't really matter for the Pistons at this point anymore, because they don't need that. They don't need to, try to win games. But I thought he was a good veteran, a good veteran presence to have in the locker room. And I know I'll get comments saying, "Oh, well, Derrick Rose is that." But the thing is, Tim Frazier is much cheaper at the veterans minimum of $1.5 million than Derrick Rose at $7.5 million. And of course, I think again, Derrick Rose has value to be traded. But yeah, so according to James Edwards, the third of The Athletic, Tim Frazier is the likely candidate to be waived to open up a roster spot. But I'm still refreshing it. I'm not seeing anything else that the Pistons are doing. I've checked my timeline. I've checked my feeds. I don't see anything from Woj. I mean, I've seen some other trades. I see Jordan McRae to Denver for Shabazz Napier. Woj tweeting now that there's no deals for the Oklahoma City Thunder at the deadline, which means Danilo Gallinari is going to remain a Thunder. And that was big because last night there was talks that the Heat were getting Danilo Gallinari, and that would have been a huge addition for them in the Eastern Conference to be able to add Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder, and Danilo Gallinari. But that is not the case. Isaiah Thomas on the move in the 3-team deal between the Clippers, Knicks, and Wizards, in which Markieff Morris is sent to the Los Angeles Clippers. Isaiah Thomas is going to the Clippers as well. So, hey, that's a decent addition for the Clippers, I would say, to get Thomas. And he's not necessarily a flyer, but he's not necessarily a great player anymore. But, he can do some things for you still. He was playing pretty decent in Washington, I guess. I mean, he's not stopping anyone, but he can score the ball a little bit. No deals at the deadline for the Pacers, says Woj. James Ennis traded to the Magic for a second-round pick. No deals for the Spurs, says Chris Haynes. I don't know why we need tweets saying no trades for teams. Just tell us if there's news. Tell us about players that are on the move. We don't need to know that teams aren't making a move when they haven't made a move. If they've made a move, tell us that. Right? So let's read some news from Kevin O'Connor. The Heat and Thunder discussed deals for Danilo Gallinari, but Miami and Gallinari couldn't agree on an extension per sources. Miami wants to retain 2021 space and offered a 2-year deal with a team option. Gallinari should earn more money by waiting until summer to sign deals. So, again, no Danilo Gallinari to the Heat. That's pretty big news considering he would have really helped the Heat and fit well next to Bam Adebayo up front. Gorgie Dang on the move to Memphis for James Johnson. James Johnson to the Timberwolves. That's according to The Athletic. But that's kind of all we're seeing now. Usually you get a couple last-minute trades rolling in right at 3 o'clock. Usually they're smaller trades, but a Markieff Morris or a Langston Galloway trade would have fit the bill there, but nothing there at the buzzer. So I think we're wrapping up the trade deadline here, and I think that can lead us into, well, let's wrap it up with the Pistons, I guess. Is this what the deadline was for Detroit? Just trading Andre Drummond? I would have thought if any player would have been moved, I didn't expect it to be Drummond to be the top, the first guy to be moved. And that's pretty crazy to me to see that Drummond is the one that would be moved when Luke Kennard, Langston Galloway, Markieff Morris were all available. Markieff Morris. I don't know if I just said Marcus. Sometimes those two names, obviously they're twins and everything. It just happens. But, we're past 3 o'clock. And that's kind of that. So let's talk about the deadline as a whole for the Pistons, considering that it appears it's over. Their ending moves at the deadline are this: Andre Drummond to the Cleveland Cavaliers for John Henson and Brandon Knight, 2 expiring contracts, and a 2023 second-round pick. Your thoughts? A good deadline for Detroit, a productive deadline for Detroit. Was it or was it not? We got a super chat here from Tony J. Wachowski. I hope I said that right, Tony. Thank you so much for the super chat. So let's get into your question, your comment. Maker, Sekou, and Wood can show what they can do. Yeah, absolutely. And, I talked about that at the beginning of the live stream. I think that's what this trade was for. It opens up. Good, I got it right, Tony. Awesome. But it opens up those minutes where Wood is going to get all the minutes he can possibly get at the 5. Thon Maker, who I will say he started the season in the rotation and was an absolute disaster. But when he started to be sprinkled back in here and there after falling out of the rotation, he's actually shown some decent things. Not that I'm saying Detroit needs to go out and re-sign him, but we'll probably see some more Thon Maker now, and we'll get to see if he's improved at all since the beginning of the season at anything sort of a consistent rate. And then Sekou, Sekou's going to get a lot of minutes now. There's, if Dwayne Casey sends him back down to the G League, which I don't know if you heard our segment on that from the podcast last week, but we posted it as its own segment on the YouTube channel here. That would have just been a terrible decision. And now there's virtually no way he can do that. And bring Sekou down, because the Pistons are going to need all the big bodies that they have, and Sekou's a guy that should get 30 minutes a night as your starting power forward moving forward. So that's kind of, if they were to get rid of him now, that would have been absolutely crazy. And send him to the G League now. But we have some news here, and this is interesting. So we're going to go to Vince Goodwill of Yahoo senior writer. Sources: a buyout for Pistons guard Reggie Jackson is an option, but is termed premature for the moment. Jackson's contract expires after the season. So, Tony, I think we're going to switch topics here, but if that was enough, let me know. I thought I gave you my thoughts there, but if you want some more, I'll definitely give them to you again. Thank you so much for the super chat. Certainly appreciate it. It helps us out here at Pals and Pistons with everything that we're trying to do. So we certainly do appreciate that. But if you want me to talk about that more, you have a different angle you want me to answer that from or talk about that comment from, I certainly will do that. But I'm going to talk about Reggie Jackson here for a minute. So, should the Pistons buy him out? I'll leave that open to the chat. Should the Pistons buy him out? You tell me. You tell me. Should he? He had 25 points the other day against the Memphis Grizzlies. Would it be smart for the Pistons to buy him out? Certainly, there was going to be no trades for him at the deadline. Certainly, no team was going to, trade anything of any sort of value for a guy making $16 million who's been out for 40 games this season. There was no reason to trade him at the deadline. But, do the Pistons buy him out now? They kept Derrick Rose. So they have Rose at point guard, Bruce Brown at point guard. Brandon Knight can play point guard. If they hold on to Tim Frazier, They wouldn't have to waive Tim Frazier if they bought out Reggie Jackson. So do they buy him out? You have Jordan Bone. Tony just pointed that out. I see that in the chat. Tony just pointed out that they still have Jordan Bone that can get minutes at point guard. So the Pistons have a lot of different options at point guard. Do they waive Tim Frazier? Do they buy out Reggie Jackson? Move on from those guys and let the Jackson era end a little bit sooner than anticipated? I think everyone was getting ready for it to end. But yeah, at the end of the season, but it's finally ending now. But I see we got a super chat in here from Bravo Mo 1982. That's your third super chat, man. Thank you so much, man, for supporting Palace of Pistons. We really do appreciate it. Let's get into what you have to say. Dre trade probably means we shouldn't draft high-paid center and repeat the previous mistake of developing a guy like Drummond. Again, it's a guard league, and I absolutely agree with you. I've had some people talk about James Wiseman to me, and I just am not in the favor of drafting a center. The Pistons just did that and went with it for 7 years and, made their center spot a key for their franchise, and it didn't go very well for them. 2 sweeps and 2 playoff appearances, a lot of losses, a lot of drama. It didn't get them anywhere. So I'm certainly not of the favor for drafting a center. I'm certainly hoping that the Pistons draft a guard. I really like Killian Hayes out of France. He's definitely a top prospect in my mind for the Pistons in terms of he'll likely be available when the Pistons are on the clock. I like Nico Mannion out of Arizona. There's a couple wings that I really like as well. Denny, I don't know how to say his last name, Advia, one of the top-rated prospects from overseas, the guy that I really like if he can figure out his shooting woes. And then Devin Hassel from Florida State. That's a guy that I really am warming up to for the Pistons, but they certainly will have some options in the draft, but they should not draft a center. That would be probably their greatest mistake, to get rid of Andre Drummond, go out and draft a center. It just really would not make sense. But let's go and check if there's any other news. I see a tweet here from the Steinline, Mike Stein. The Lakers are expected to get free agent J.R. Smith, post-trade deadline audition. Same with Darren Collison. But nothing Pistons there. So let's see. Anything else on the Pistons? Again, if you guys see anything Pistons news related, definitely throw it in the chat. I'm going to try to see it. But the chat does move somewhat fast, so it's not always easy for me to read. But again, thank you to everyone that's donated in the super chat. Really do appreciate that. Bravo. Hope I was able to get through your question, your comment pretty well there. But yeah, again, I'm with you. Drafting a center after doing that with Drummond would just be running in a circle. It doesn't do anything for me. Let's see, Bravo here in the chat. Killian Hayes, Cole Anthony. If we can't get LaMelo or Anthony Edwards, Pistons need to tank right now. Yeah, I mean, it's what it's looking like. That's what it's looking like for sure. A lot of tanking games coming up here, but I really do like Killian Hayes. His passing looks really good. Has good size at 6'5". So that's a guy that if you haven't watched, if you haven't read up on, take 5-10 minutes at some point and just go on YouTube, pull up some film, or pull up an article. Just search up Killian Hayes scouting report on Google, and read up, watch some stuff on him. He's definitely an intriguing prospect. Devin 99 is Dante Hall coming up. Haven't seen anything on that. I know he's been a name that's drawn some intrigue out of the Grand Rapids. He's played really well with the drive in the G League, but haven't heard anything on him coming up yet. So maybe it's a possibility, but I haven't seen anything, officially saying that the Pistons are calling up Dante Hall. But, he would be a guy that maybe does draw a look now, give him a 10-day deal and see if he can, play with the big boys. He's done it all in Grand Rapids, and I think the Pistons kind of have a history of taking big men in Grand Rapids and succeeding with them. Landry Nanoco, they've had Eric Moreland in the summer league. They do a good job with young guys, finding those young guys, those young bigs that have some talent, and getting a lot out of them, whether it's in the G League or up in the NBA. So certainly something to maybe watch for. Is Dante Hall potentially coming up? So let's see. I see a comment here from, it's kind of long, but I'm going to read it from 5HB hollow in a vacuum. This trade isn't even, but say we use the cap space we just earned to take on a contract and get an asset for doing that. This trade could look much better. Yeah, and I mean, you want to have money available for when it's time to extend Luke Kennard. When you go into July and Luke Kennard's extension eligible, and you want to bring back Christian Wood when he's an unrestricted free agent and has plenty of suitors, as it sounds like he does. Reports from around the league saying that there were a lot of teams that called about Christian Wood, and the Pistons fended them off and didn't accept any offers. And again, I've heard a lot about the offseason for Christian Wood and what he's hoping to get in free agency. He's not going to be a 2-year, $5 million guy. He's not going to come back on some super value deal unless he falls apart the rest of the way and the Pistons decide to bring him back and give him a chance. But all signs point to him getting a pretty big extension, a pretty big payday in the offseason. So that's kind of what you have to use the money with. I'm going to read a tweet from HP Basketball. The return on this Drummond deal is so bad that I can't say the Pistons did well, but Drummond comes with so many issues on so many levels for a team starting Sexton that I can't say the Cavs did well either. This is the best trade. Huh. I mean, interesting. I've always maintained that if you put Drummond on a good team, he will look phenomenal because he won't have to do as much as everyone else. The better players as much as he does on the Pistons. If you put him on a Boston, and I've talked about this on a couple podcasts, I think Drummond would have been amazing on Boston. You have a star-level guard in Kemba Walker to run the pick and roll with. You have good defending wings in Jaylen Brown, in Marcus Smart. You have guys that can score the ball in Gordon Hayward and Jason Tatum. Drummond would be maximized to what he's good at, which is rebounding, blocking shots, garbage points, putbacks, second chance opportunities. He wouldn't be dribbling the ball outside of the perimeter, razzling and dazzling with the ball in his hand. He would be able to play within his wheelhouse. And going to Cleveland doesn't really help him in that sense. He's, again, put in a bad situation with bad guards that aren't good passers and a terrible defensive team. I will say I'm intrigued to watch him and Kevin Love play together because Cleveland did not trade Kevin Love. And I'm wondering if adding Drummond maybe ignites Kevin Love a little bit to get another all-star alongside him. Does that excite him? They still have Tristan Thompson on the roster, though. Unless I missed a trade, the Cavs still have Tristan Thompson on the roster. And he's a starting level center, at least to most people. So they have, 3 bigs in Kevin Love, Andre Drummond, and Tristan Thompson now that are all starters. That's going to be interesting to see and interesting to play out. But this is an interesting deadline for the Pistons. And again, I want to get your guys' thoughts here on this. Probably going to wrap this up soon since we're not getting any more news on the Pistons. I know Tim Forkin's working on a video on the Drummond trade for our YouTube channel here. It might already be up, honestly, but let's just go around one more time and check social media, check the Twitter sphere to see if there's any other stuff on the Pistons and Andre Drummond, any other big trades that have maybe happened. But, again, it just doesn't look like it. I think it was projected that this was going to be a quiet deadline, and it wasn't I wouldn't say it was a quiet deadline for the league, but it was a quiet deadline for the Pistons, although they traded a big name. Andy Zaldano with the Go Crusaders. Yes, I'm a Madonna Crusader. This is where I go to school. So you can see that in the background. Go Crusaders. Got a pretty good basketball team here. But, hey, they might be able to beat the Pistons at this point. I still see a lot of the stuff in the chat that people are not happy with this trade. And, I can't say that I disagree with you in terms of what they got back. But, again, I'm gonna stress that you don't want Drummond opting into that $28 million contract in July. And that's why even if the return was minimal, you let him go. You traded him. So, one last chance here for any super chats. If you guys have any final questions. If not, we're going to wrap this up here as I'm not seeing anything else on any other things Pistons related. So the Pistons are going to leave the trade deadline holding on to Markieff Morris, holding on to Luke Kennard, holding on to Derrick Rose, holding on to Langston Galloway, but trading Andre Drummond, two-time All-Star, an All-NBA player, and that's going to be that. That's going to be that. They don't move Markieff Morris. They're unable to get any other picks. They add just one pick at the trade deadline. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up here. We talked about the trade deadline. We talked about the trade deadline for the Pistons over this last 40 minutes. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you're not subscribed, definitely do subscribe. I see a comment here from ZXT. So the Uncut Gems video has become our reality. Hey, go check that out. Zarik Turner of Palace of Pistons put together a great video relating Uncut Gems to Andre Drummond. It's on our channel feed, so you can check that out. But that's going to do it for us here. Again, if you're not subscribed, definitely subscribe. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who donated with the super chats today. And maybe this is something we can do again. If this is something you guys want to see, definitely let us know. Let us know here in the comments. On Twitter at Palace of Pistons. Let us know that you like this kind of stuff, and we'll continue to provide it for you. So thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Palace of Pistons.